Good evening everybody, hope you're all well. It's Saturday night and it's quite late. Earlier today I ran a poll, never done one before on YouTube, thought I'd give it a go. Who wants to see a technical breakdown of Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury? This is a fight I wouldn't have previously entertained whatsoever, but there's huge interest in this and I thought maybe I'm missing a trick, and you all asked overwhelmingly if I would cover the fight. Anybody who didn't want to hear a fight prediction from myself, who's considered a real traditionalist really, and not someone who goes into gimmick fights, then just block your ears for 10 minutes. What I'm going to do is break this down without prejudice and without running effectively a social commentary on everything surrounding the fight, the hype, the build-up, the stage of the fighters' careers. I'm just going to address this from the limited footage I've seen of both. I've seen a little bit more of Tommy Fury than I have of Jake Paul, but I did a little bit of homework today. And I've seen highlights on YouTube of Jake Paul, so I'm not going to pretend, even though I'm a traditionalist, that I've never seen him and I've never heard of him, because that wouldn't be true, it wouldn't be honest, and I think you all want me to be completely honest. So, the fight. We've got Tommy Fury. Obviously, we all know the Tommy Fury name, and it's something of he's still for me quite unknown. He's certainly more of a known quantity than Jake Paul, but he had limited amateur experience. He only had 11 amateur fights. I think he won the majority of those and got through to the development finals, which takes some doing in itself. And he's effectively had 8 pro fights over 4 years. We had COVID, of course, which impacted the pace, but he's really not been overly active in the past 12 months. Various reasons for that, injuries and things, and just some kind of odd goings on. But I said I would keep away from that and I would look at the fight in itself. So we've got the YouTube sensation, Jake Paul. I believe he's had 6 fights or 7 fights. Forgive me if I get this wrong again. I'm not going to look in depth like I would at any normal fight or a high profile fight featuring elite athletes. But he's 26, he's a late start to boxing, no amateur experience whatsoever, so he's had limited times in the gym. Okay, what do I think to the fight? I'm talking about a technical breakdown, by the way, I'm not talking about anything else. I think it's an interesting fight. So I'll start with Tommy Fury. I'll look at the things he does well and the things he doesn't do quite so good. But as you'd expect, he's still a novice. So Tommy Fury, first of all, looks to have decent feet. I don't believe he's a light heavyweight. I think he'll struggle making 175 pounds if that's the weight division he chooses to operate in, because he's got a hell of a physique for someone who's 175 pound or 12.5 stone. But he's got nice feet, good movement. He has a nice long spearing jab. That's something of a Fury hallmark really, or a Fury thing. He's that nice long jab. They're all very traditional in terms of the boxers. If you look at Tyson Fury, Hughie Fury, even Roman Fury, who's obviously brand new to boxing, everything's about the boxing. They're not guys who just brawl. They can brawl, but they're not effectively guys who just look to get stuck in there and to trade. They're educated. They're educated with the left jab, or the right jab in Roman Fury's case, and it's all about the hit and not get hit, okay? Of course they can have rumbles, I'm not suggesting they can't. So I looked at the strengths of Tommy Fury. So first of all, he's a physical specimen. As I've said, he's got a nice jab. I don't love some of the more power shots that he throws. I think the jury's out whether he remains to be a puncher or not. You know, he's been knocking over guys at quite a low level so far, but he certainly looks a strong enough kid. When you see him on the bag and see him on the pads, he does carry some power, but whether that's enough power to knock out higher level fighters and whether he'd ever get those openings and opportunities is another thing. But he looks decent. What I do worry about with Tommy Fury, and this is just an instinctive thing, it's not based on anything that I've seen or anything that I've heard through the grapevine, I worry about his chin. The reason I say that is because I saw a couple of his sort of fights, a couple of his 4-rounders, and there was one opponent whose name escapes me, so apologies for that, who caught him several times with right hands. And they didn't look particularly big shots, but there was just 1 or 2 instances where he looked to freeze ever so slightly. And that made me wonder if he'd got more of his father's chin than his brother's. And again, that's not being a criticism, but you know, we saw Big John Fury knocked over. Again, he was an honest pro himself, and he got nailed with big shots, but Big John could go over and stay over. Unlike Tyson, who's got a solid chin and an even better recovery and recuperative powers. I'm wondering if Tommy hasn't got the greatest of chins. Now, I know that's quite an assumption to make, but I always worry when I see fighters get hit and they have a moment, it's kind of a momentarily kind of freeze, and I've seen that with Tommy. There's just something about a fighter when he gets hit and he freezes and he pauses for a second, but the eyes glaze over very, very quickly. And that's always, for me, a worrying sign that a fighter might not hold a shot too well. So Tommy's so far, if I was watching him and I didn't know his name, I'd say he's a young prospect. He's got potential. He needs a lot more seasoning. And I would think he's a 6 out of 10. He's certainly better than just your average kid who's turning over, but he's obviously not, as you'd expect, that elite kid, or he's nowhere near the level of a fighter who's come through the GB or the podium squad, for example. But you wouldn't expect that, would you? You have to be fair to him. Okay, I'm going to move on to Jake Paul. I've watched 5 or 6 rounds of Jake Paul today. You can see, first of all, the improvement. Massive, massive improvement from his debut to his more recent fights. But the fights that he's had, they've been jokes, to be honest. They really have been jokes. I'm not suggesting Tommy Fury for one moment. He's beaten stellar opposition. He's beaten the kind of kids that you'd expect. But there was something very, very white collar about the level of opposition that Jake Paul's had. And I know he fought, was it Silva in his last fight? And he must be 47 years old or something. And he was only, you know, oh no, not only, he was a fantastic mixed martial artist, but he wasn't a boxer as such. And that was kind of a worrying fight for me. But what have I learned from watching Jake Paul fight? Not too much. What I did learn, and sometimes you have to not just watch the fights, but you have to watch the training videos and the sparring. Now, I saw him sparring with Hasim Rahman Jr. Full 6 rounds. There was a bit of argy-bargy at the end of it, and Rahman Jr. is nothing special, let's be honest. But for me, it became really apparent watching that sparring that Hasim Rahman Jr. is an absolute, that Jake Paul is an absolute novice when it comes to boxing. An absolute novice. He continually jabs the body. More experienced fighters tend to jab the body because they're waiting for a reaction, they're waiting for the guard to drop, and they can bring the right hand over the top. You know, great fighters change the position of the jab to different points. It was almost like a hesitant space awareness, space feeling jab when he was jabbing the body. He didn't quite know where his feet was or where his opponent's feet was. And he continually jabbed the body because at least he was hitting something. So that for me was telltale. He landed a couple of right hands late on in the spar. Rahman seemed to tire. It wasn't a great spar, but what I saw was Jake Paul going forward in straight lines, backwards in straight lines, and really limited. He has not a great jab. He has a nice right hook. I say right hook. He'll throw a straight right as well, but he throws the right hook kind of round, or he'll turn it over the top, and he looks to have a little bit of power in his right hand. That can't be said for his left hand or his left hook. He doesn't actually possess a left hook, and when he does throw it, if you watch the videos closely, watch him on the bags, the pads, or his fights, the left hook, it's a swipe. He's not turning the shot over, he's not rotating the shot, and it really is like a swipe, and it's almost like, I wouldn't call it a slap, but I wouldn't call it a full shot either. Defensively, he's all over the place. He does what Darky Smith used to call pray. When some fighters sometimes hold their hands together like that, they pray. When they're about to launch an attack, they'll be there, and then they'll there, and then they'll pray. And there's not a lot going on. He's learnt a few dips, learnt a few rolls, but I don't see him defensively being that good. So what I did was 12 months ago, 6 months ago, when Tommy Fury pulled out of the fight, I kind of went along with the narrative, mostly because I didn't follow these fighters too much and didn't know much about them, and I generally had my own opinion, but the narrative seemed to be that Tommy Fury didn't want the fight, and that Jake Paul would very likely beat Tommy Fury. That seemed to be the narrative. There's a lot of leading boxing experts picking Jake Paul to do just that. But then I really started to look at both of those fighters, and what you're going to get now is you're going to get a real neutral prediction from me. I say it's a neutral prediction because I'm not a fan of either, but I'm not somebody who's against either as well. And again, I'm talking about from a boxing point of view. I'm not going to start to bring in any other personal views or views about the sanctity of boxing, because I've expressed those on my mate's channel, Porky's Corner. This is about the fight. So, what do I think? This might surprise you. It might not. I think Tommy Fury is going to beat him easy. I really, really do. Do I think Tommy Fury is going to be a British or a European or anything above that in terms of the professional division? No, I don't. But Jake Paul, I keep hearing how much has improved. He absolutely looks to me like a white-collar fighter, a limited, tough kid. He's a tough kid, he's game. You can have whoever you want training you. But ultimately, if you're not steeped in boxing, and I'm not suggesting that Tommy Fury has a massive experience himself, but he's always been around it. But Jake Paul clearly, to me, looks like a fighter who hasn't spent a lot of time in a ring, and he has certainly no amateur background, and you can see his feet are not good. His upper body is square. He's looking to land the wild right hand over the top all the time. And I can see Tommy Fury really just jabbing him, moving, being sensible, and bringing Jake Paul onto the backhand, onto the right uppercut. And will it be a completely one-sided fight? I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure. I think it might be competitive for 2 or 3 rounds, but I'm always honest. I always go with what I believe, and I think Tommy Fury is probably going to be a couple of levels at least above Jake Paul. I'm surprised that a lot of really good boxing experts are thinking Jake Paul's just going to walk in there and knock Tommy Fury out or put on a convincing win. I just don't see it. I believe in being around the sport for a long time. You don't have to be the best, but I know a novice when I see a novice, and I'm talking an absolute novice. You have to respect the art, and you have to be around it for so long before you can start to do certain things. People might say, well, what about this guy and what about that guy? But ultimately, Jake Paul has had things his own way. He's had easy opponents, but he's not doing the things that I would expect him, the subtleties and nuances of boxing that I would expect him to be able to do to beat someone like Tommy Fury, who I've said is probably a 6 out of 10 right now. So this prediction might surprise some of you. It might disappoint some of you. It might delight some of you. This is just how I see the fight going. I think we'll have a relatively competitive first 3 rounds. But I think Jake Paul, because he's tough and he might have a decent chin, he's going to be game, but he's also going to struggle closing the distance. It's one thing Tommy Fury having decent hands, and I keep saying the word decent because I'm not waxing lyrical too much here, but Tommy Fury's got decent hands. I like the fact he's working with Matvienko as well as his father John, and I like Matvienko, I know him well. He's a really good solid coach, and I also know that Tommy Fury will be in fantastic condition. But I just think probably the thousands of rounds that Tommy's sparred over the years with his family, with other people, the fact that he's been around boxing for so long. He's a little bit younger. I think he's physically probably bigger than Jake Paul. I think it'll be too much for him, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a stoppage between rounds 3 and rounds 5. And if he does go the distance, I think it'll be quite a wide scoring for Tommy Fury. But I'm going to put it out there. I'm not one to sit on the fence. I'm not one of these people you'll ever hear and say Jake Paul early or Tommy Fury late, and then when one of those things happens, say I told you so. I always nail my colours to the mast. I think Tommy Fury is a level above, he's a better fighter, and he's going to end the fight with a spectacular knockout inside of 5 rounds. If I'm right, I'm right. I won't take too much credit for that. I've not studied this like I studied some other fights. And if I'm wrong, I'll own it and say, again, I haven't studied it too much like I have some other fights. But yeah, I don't get the Jake Paul prediction. And as always, please like, share, subscribe, leave some great comments, leave your views. But as always, no matter what you think about the fighters, it's really important that they both come home safely to their families, to their loved ones. And just remember, and I keep saying this all the time now, and I keep quoting my friend Sean O'Hagan, it's just a bit of boxing. Don't take it too seriously. Don't get too het up about it. Good night, everybody. You take care.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.